The raft. He had escaped from sweating under the hot sun on the cannabis plantation by weaving a raft from the plants. It was little more than a mat, but it served him to ride the swell over the reef and wave goodbye to the slave drivers cracking their whips on the shore. He was free at last. The only trouble was that every time he rolled a joint, his craft grew smaller, and already, after only a few hours at sea, he was clutching at straws. Seen against the setting sun, the mountains of the island were a blessing to the desperate man. As the last fibres of the craft parted beneath him, he nonchalantly flicked away the roach and swam triumphantly to shore. He found the whole island was covered in a thick carpet of psychedelic plants. The very air was tainted with nitrous oxide, so he was out of his mind the minute he landed. He saw all the world and every grain of sand on the beach. Stoned out of his crust, he hacked his way through the impenetrable drug-saturated jungle, cutting through the cannabis stalks until he reached a giant fly-agaric mushroom, big enough to carve a house out of, and live like a gnome for a day or so before exploring again. Fruit trees of every type surrounded him, interspersed with vast stretches of unlikely-looking blooms and weird but friendly beasts that often nuzzled against him and licked his hands when they met. The juju buds, bursting with psychedelic perfumes, bedazzled his mind, and the strange insects with their jewelled bodies and flamboyant wings hummed a tune as they flew by. Through the opium-black nights he stalked the star-spangled highs, alone in heaven, the king of all he surveyed. Eventually he realized that in his world it was so magical that anything he desired would automatically come into being. The first thing he asked for was a mate. He sculpted her in his mind by thinking back to all the great sexual moments of his life and superimposing them. His aim was for the two of them to experience all his eyes' epiphanies simultaneously, whenever they looked into each other's eyes. They were the only humans, so they didn't need names. He found it effortlessly satisfying to play together through aeons of timeless rapture. Each single sensation hung from heaven by a divine cord, and an orchestra of celestial electricity embraced them in coils of egoless passion. 10,000 years later the invaders came, dressed in armour and carrying weapons never seen before. They ploughed into the jungle paradise, making inharmonious noises and screaming obscene words. Man and his mate watched the invasion from the top of an ecstasy plant, lying back in the petals, speculating on how far they would get. They laughed as one after another the troops succumbed to the pleasures of the environment, tumbled from their machines, and lay about laughing on the grass. None of the soldiers ever returned. The island was put off limits as uninhabitable territory, detrimental to serious violence. Many more years passed, and others came to the island, but only the most creative stayed and discovered innumerable ways to enhance the natural pleasures and extend the pathways to ever-exalting realms. It was a utopia where peace reigned, and if there was any sign of discord, it had only to bring out his secret weapon, his wife. Although she was composed of all his greatest moments, and was an angel of beauty to him, her appearance was frightening to others. The ultra-sexual impact she evoked, the dynamic vision of all his desires, coupled with epiphanies of spiritual transcendence, exploding right in their faces, sent them scampering into the trees. And when she ran after them to reassure them, her multiple legs brought even more distress, and the unworthy invariably departed on the first bird out. But the more resolute stayed on, and are still there. I visited a month or so back, and we played chess together, sitting in the steaming waters of a volcanic lake, with the snow falling and the huge round face of the lunar goddess dominating the sky. The image of the moon on the water of the pool looked like infinitely fine tissue paper. I gently eased the tips of my fingers under the rim of the reflection, and very delicately rolled it up, as the skin for a joint.